The ultrasound screen flickered to life, a grainy black and white image pulsing before my eyes. I gripped the edge of the exam table, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and anxiety. This was it, our first glimpse of our baby. "Everything looks great, Mrs. Pearson," the technician said, her voice warm and reassuring. "Would you like me to print out a picture for you and your husband?" I swallowed hard, fighting back the lump in my throat. "Just me today," I managed to say. "My husband couldn't make it." The technician's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Of course, I'll print 2 copies for you to take home." As I left the clinic, clutching the precious images in my hand, I couldn't shake the feeling of disappointment that threatened to overwhelm me. Ethan had promised he'd be here. He'd sworn up and down that nothing would keep him from this moment. Yet here I was, alone again. I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over Ethan's name. Should I call him? Tell him what he'd missed? But what was the point? He probably wouldn't even pick up. Instead, I dialed my best friend Sarah, answering on the first ring. "The baby's perfect," I was trying to inject some enthusiasm into my voice. "Healthy and right on track." "And Ethan?" I sighed. "MIA. Again." Sarah's sharp intake of breath crackled through the phone. "Oh, Audrey, I'm so sorry. What did he say when you called him?" "I didn't," I admitted. "What's the use? He's probably neck-deep in some project oblivious to the world around him." "You need to talk to him, Aud. This isn't right." I knew she was right, but the thought of another confrontation with Ethan made my stomach churn. "I will. Tonight, I promise." As I pulled into our driveway, I steeled myself for what was to come. The house was dark, no sign of life within. I shouldn't have been surprised, but disappointment hit me like a punch to the gut. I flicked on the lights, the emptiness of our home suddenly oppressive. How had it come to this? Ethan and I used to be a team, partners in everything. Now I felt like I was navigating this pregnancy alone. The clock ticked past 7, then 8. By 9, I'd given up on dinner, picking at a bowl of cereal as I scrolled through my phone. The ultrasound pictures sat on the kitchen counter, a bittersweet reminder of the day's events. Finally, at 10:30, I heard the garage door rumble open. Ethan's footsteps echoed through the house, growing louder as he approached the kitchen. "Hey," he said, his voice weary. "Sorry I'm late. The Johnson account is—" "You missed the ultrasound," I cut him off, my voice sharper than I'd intended. Ethan froze, his eyes widening as realization dawned. "That was today? Oh God, Audrey, I'm so sorry, I completely forgot." "Forgot," I echoed, disbelief coloring my tone. "How could you forget? We've had this appointment on the calendar for weeks." He ran a hand through his hair, looking lost. "I've been swamped at work. You know how important this account is for the firm." "More important than our baby?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's face crumpled. "Of course not. I got caught up. It won't happen again, I promise." But even as the words left his mouth, I knew they were empty. How many promises had he broken in the past few months? How many times had I been left waiting, hoping he'd show up? I stood up, suddenly unable to bear his presence. "I'm going to bed," I said, brushing past him. "Audrey, wait," Ethan called after me. "Can we talk about this?" I paused at the foot of the stairs, turning to face him. "What's there to talk about, Ethan? You weren't there. Again, I think that says it all." As I climbed the stairs, leaving Ethan standing alone in the kitchen, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. And for the first time since we'd learned I was pregnant, I found myself wondering if I was ready to face parenthood alone. The weeks following the ultrasound incident were a blur of tense silences and half-hearted apologies. Ethan tried. I'll give him that. He brought home flowers, attempted to cook dinner with disastrous results, and even managed to make it to our next doctor's appointment. But something had shifted between us, a chasm opening where there was once solid ground. One particularly rough morning, as I battled another bout of morning sickness, I heard Ethan's footsteps approaching the bathroom. "Audrey, you okay in there?" His voice was muffled through the door. I wiped my mouth, fighting back tears of frustration. "I'm fine," I managed to croak out. "All right, well, I've got to head to the office. Big presentation today. You'll be okay?" I stared at the closed door, disbelief washing over me. "Sure, Ethan. Go. I'll be just fine." The sound of his retreating footsteps felt like a physical blow. I sank to the cool tile floor, one hand resting on my slightly swollen belly. "Looks like it's just you and me, little one," I whispered. Later that day, I found myself in my home office, trying to focus on work. My business, a small but growing marketing firm, had been my pride and joy. Now it felt like just another weight on my shoulders. The phone rang, startling me out of my daze. It was my mother. "Audrey, honey, how are you feeling?" I opened my mouth to say fine, but what came out instead was a choked sob. "Oh, sweetheart," my mom's voice softened. "What's wrong?" And just like that, everything I'd been holding back for weeks came pouring out. Ethan's absence, my fears about the pregnancy, the loneliness that seemed to permeate every corner of my life. "Why don't you come stay with us for a few days?" Mom suggested when I'd finally run out of words. "Your father and I would love to have you." The offer was tempting, but I hesitated. "I don't know, Mom. Ethan will understand," she said firmly. "You need support right now, Audrey. Let us help." That evening, when Ethan finally came home, I was packing a small suitcase. "What's going on?" he asked, confusion etched across his face. "I'm going to stay with my parents for a few days," I said, not meeting his eyes. "What? Why?" I whirled to face him, sudden anger flaring. "Because I can't do this anymore, Ethan. I can't sit in this house, feeling alone and scared, while you bury yourself in work. Audrey, I'm trying." "Are you?" I shot back. "Because from where I'm standing, it doesn't look like you're trying at all. It looks like you're running away." Ethan's face hardened. "That's not fair. I'm working hard to provide for our family. We need more than money, Ethan. We need you, I need you." "So your solution is to run to Mommy and Daddy?" he scoffed. The words hit me like a slap. "At least they're there for me," I said, my voice low and trembling. Ethan's eyes widened, realizing he'd gone too far. "Audrey, I didn't mean. Save it." I cut him off, zipping up my suitcase. "I'll be at my parents'. Call me when you're ready to be a partner in this marriage again." I brushed past him, suitcase in hand, fighting back tears as I made my way to the car. As I pulled out of the driveway, I saw Ethan standing in the doorway, watching me go. For a moment, I thought he might come after me, might try to stop me. He didn't. The drive to my parents' house was a blur. As by the time I pulled into their driveway, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. The front door opened before I could even get out of the car, my mother's worried face appearing in the warm light spilling from inside. "Oh, honey," she said, wrapping me in a hug as soon as I was close enough. "It's going to be okay?" And for the first time in weeks, surrounded by the familiar scents and sounds of my childhood home, I felt like maybe, just maybe, it would be. The days at my parents' house blurred together, a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. Mom fussed over me, making sure I ate properly and rested, while Dad kept me distracted with his corny jokes and endless stories about his glory days. It felt like stepping back in time, before the complications of adulthood had set in. One morning, as I sat on the porch swing, sipping decaf and watching the neighborhood come to life, Mom joined me. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" she asked, her eyes searching my face. I sighed, resting a hand on my growing belly. "Better, I think. It's been nice to just breathe for a while." She nodded, patting my knee. "Have you talked to Ethan?" The mention of his name sent a jolt through me. "He's called a few times, left messages." "And?" I shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "I'm not ready yet." Mom was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "You can't avoid him forever, Audrey. You're having a baby together." Her words hit me like a bucket of cold water, reality crashing back in. Before I could respond, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway caught our attention. My heart leaped into my throat as I recognized Ethan's SUV. But it wasn't just Ethan. As the car doors opened, I saw his parents, Veronica and Jonathan, emerge as well. "Did you know they were coming?" I hissed at my mom. She shook her head, looking as surprised as I felt. "Your father must have called them." I stood up, suddenly feeling exposed in my oversized t-shirt and leggings. Ethan approached first, his face a mask of concern and regret. "Audrey," he said, his voice cracking slightly, "can we talk?" I nodded stiffly, leading him inside to the living room. Veronica and Jonathan followed, exchanging awkward greetings with my parents. Once we were all seated, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. It was Veronica who finally broke it. "Audrey, dear," she began, her voice gentle, "we're so sorry about everything that's been happening. Ethan told us about how things have been." I glanced at Ethan, who was staring at his hands, looking more defeated than I'd ever seen him. Jonathan cleared his throat. "Son, why don't you tell Audrey what you told us?" Ethan looked up, his eyes meeting mine. "I've been an idiot, Audrey. I got so caught up in trying to prove myself at work, to be the provider I thought I needed to be, that I forgot what really matters." He paused, swallowing hard. "You matter. Our baby matters. And I'm so sorry for making you feel alone." I felt tears pricking at my eyes. a mix of relief and lingering hurt washing over me. It's not just about being alone, Ethan. It's about feeling like we're not partners anymore, like I'm facing all of this by myself. I know, he said, his voice thick with emotion, and I want to change that. I've talked to my boss about cutting back my hours, about working from home more. I want to be there for you, for every appointment, every milestone, if you'll let me. I looked around the room at the hopeful faces of our parents, then back to Ethan. I want to believe you, I said slowly. But words aren't enough anymore. I need to see action. Ethan nodded eagerly. Absolutely, whatever it takes, Audrey, I'll prove it to you. As we continued to talk, hashing out plans and promises, I felt a cautious hope blooming in my chest. But there was still a nagging doubt, a fear that we'd fall back into old patterns. Later that night, as I lay in my childhood bed, I placed both hands on my belly, feeling the slight flutter of movement within. What do you think, little one? I whispered. Should we give Daddy another chance? The baby kicked in response, and I couldn't help but smile. Maybe, just maybe, we could make this work after all. But as I drifted off to sleep, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered a warning. Trust, once broken, is not easily mended. The drive home from my parents' house was filled with a nervous energy. Ethan and I had spent the past week rebuilding our connection, talking late into the night about our fears, hopes, and expectations for our growing family. His promises of change seemed sincere, but a part of me remained guarded, waiting to see if his actions would match his words. As we pulled into our driveway, Ethan reached over and squeezed my hand. Welcome home, love, he said, a tentative smile on his face. I returned the smile, trying to ignore the flutter of anxiety in my chest. It's good to be back. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of doctor's appointments, birthing classes, and nursery preparations. True to his word, Ethan was present for every moment, his enthusiasm infectious. I found myself slowly letting my guard down, allowing hope to bloom once more. One evening, as we sat on the couch reviewing our birth plan, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his brow furrowing. Everything okay? I asked, noticing his sudden tension. He hesitated before answering. It's work. There's a crisis with the Johnson account. They're asking me to fly out to Chicago tomorrow. My heart sank. Tomorrow? But we have our LeMay's class and the nursery furniture is being delivered. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, looking torn. I know, but this account is huge, Audrey. If we lose it... I felt a familiar anger rising. So what? All those promises about putting family first were just talk? Of course not, he said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. It's just one trip. I'll be back before you know it. I stood up, suddenly feeling suffocated. Go then. Do what you have to do. Audrey, please. Ethan pleaded. Don't be like this. I'm trying. Are you? I shot back. Because from where I'm standing, it looks an awful lot like before. Before Ethan could respond, a sharp pain ripped through my abdomen. I gasped, doubling over. Audrey. Ethan was at my side in an instant, his face pale with worry. What's wrong? I don't know, I managed through gritted teeth. Something's not right. The next few hours passed in a blur of ambulance sirens, hospital corridors, and frantic doctors. By the time I was wheeled into the delivery room, I was delirious with pain and fear. It's too early, I kept saying, gripping Ethan's hand so tightly I thought I might break it. She's not ready. But ready or not, our daughter was determined to make her entrance into the world. After what felt like an eternity of pushing and pain, a tiny, angry cry filled the room. It's a girl, the doctor announced, holding up our impossibly small daughter. Harper, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Her name is Harper. As the nurses whisked her away to the NICU, I turned to Ethan. His face was a mix of joy and terror, mirroring my own emotions. She's so small, he said, his voice cracking. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. In that moment, all our previous arguments seemed trivial. We were parents now, united in our love and fear for this tiny human we'd created. The next few days were a roller coaster of emotions. Harper was a fighter, growing stronger each day, but the sight of her in the incubator, hooked up to various machines, was almost more than I could bear. Ethan never left my side, canceling his trip and delegating the Johnson account to a colleague. He spent hours by Harper's incubator, talking softly to her, promising her the world. As I watched them together, I felt a renewed sense of commitment to our family. We'd been given a second chance, and I was determined not to waste it. But life, I was learning, had a way of throwing curveballs when you least expected them, and our biggest challenge was yet to come. The first few months of motherhood were a blur of sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and a love so fierce it took my breath away. Harper was thriving. Her premature birth, nothing but a distant memory as she grew into a happy, chubby-cheeked baby. But as I settled into my new role as a mother, I found myself struggling to keep all the plates spinning. One particularly chaotic morning, I was trying to feed Harper while simultaneously participating in a conference call for my business. Ethan had left for work before dawn as usual, leaving me to juggle everything alone. "Yes, Mr. Donovan, I understand the importance of the deadline," I said into my headset, my voice strained as I attempted to spoon pureed carrots into Harper's resistant mouth. "I assure you, we'll have the proposal ready by—" Suddenly, Harper's tiny hand knocked the spoon, sending orange goop flying across my white blouse. I gasped, momentarily forgetting I was on the call. "Miss Pearson? Is everything all right?" Mr. Donovan's voice crackled through the headset. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. "Yes, I'm sorry. Just a small mishap," as I was saying. But Harper chose that moment to let out an ear-piercing wail, drowning out my words. I felt my face flush with embarrassment and frustration. "Perhaps we should reschedule," Mr. Donovan said, his tone cool and professional. "When you're less distracted." The call ended abruptly, leaving me in stunned silence. Harper continued to cry, orange carrots smeared across her face and my ruined blouse. I felt tears welling up in my own eyes as the weight of everything came crashing down on me. That evening, when Ethan finally came home, I was at my breaking point. "How was your day?" he asked, loosening his tie as he walked into the living room where I sat, surrounded by baby toys and work files. I looked up at him, too exhausted to even muster anger. Awful. I lost a potential client because I couldn't manage a simple phone call without Harper interrupting. I'm behind on 3 projects, the house is a mess, and I can't remember the last time I showered. Ethan's face fell. "I'm sorry, Audrey. Is there anything I can do to help?" "Now you ask," I said, my voice rising. "Where were you this morning when I needed help? Or yesterday? Or the day before that?" "I've been working, Audrey. You know how important this new project is," Ethan defended. "And what about our project?" I gestured to Harper, sleeping peacefully in her playpen. "What about our family?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, looking conflicted. "I'm trying, Audrey. I really am. But someone has to provide for this family." "And what am I doing?" I shot back. "Playing house? I'm trying to run a business and be a full-time mother with zero support from you." Our raised voices stirred Harper, who began to fuss. I moved to pick her up, but Ethan beat me to it. "I've got her," he said softly, cradling our daughter against his chest. "Why don't you take a break? Go take that shower. Maybe get some rest." I wanted to argue, to make him understand how unfair it all was, but the fight had drained out of me. I nodded silently and headed for the bathroom. As the hot water washed over me, I let the tears flow freely. Something had to give. I couldn't keep going like this, stretched thin between my roles as mother, entrepreneur, and wife. Stepping out of the shower, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked tired, defeated. This wasn't the Audrey I knew, the strong, independent woman who had built a successful business from the ground up. In that moment, I made a decision. Things had to change, and if Ethan wasn't willing to step up, I would have to take matters into my own hands. As I dressed, my mind raced with possibilities. It was time to reclaim my life, my career, and my sense of self. Little did I know, the universe had its own plans, and the true test of our marriage was just around the corner. The doorbell rang just as I was attempting to coax a fussy Harper into eating her dinner. Sighing, I wiped my hands on my stained apron and made my way to the front door, bouncing Harper on my hip. To my surprise, Veronica and Jonathan stood on the porch, arms laden with takeout bags. "Surprise!" Veronica chirped, her smile faltering slightly as she took in my disheveled appearance. "We thought you could use a break and some company." I blinked, momentarily stunned. That's so thoughtful. Please, come in." As we settled in the living room, the aroma of Italian food filling the air, I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. It had been so long since anyone had done something kind for me, something that wasn't related to the baby or work. "Where's Ethan?" Jonathan asked, glancing around the room. I swallowed hard. "Working late, again." Veronica and Jonathan exchanged a look that spoke volumes. "Audrey, dear," Veronica began, her voice gentle. "How are you really doing?" The question, so simple yet so loaded, broke something inside me. Before I knew it, I was sobbing, spilling out all my frustrations and fears. Harper, sensing my distress, began to wail as well. Jonathan quickly took Harper, soothing her with a practiced ease that made my heart ache. Veronica wrapped her arm around me, her presence comforting in a way I hadn't realized I needed. "I'm so sorry," I hiccuped, embarrassed by my outburst. "I don't know what came over me." "Oh, honey," Veronica said, her eyes filled with understanding. "You have nothing to apologize for. We had no idea things were this bad." As we talked over dinner with Harper now peacefully asleep, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. Veronica and Jonathan listened without judgment, offering support and advice. "We'll talk to Ethan," Jonathan promised, his usually jovial face serious. "This isn't fair to you or Harper. He needs to step up." I nodded, grateful for their support but also wary. "I've tried talking to him. He always promises to do better, but nothing ever changes." Veronica squeezed my hand. "Let us handle it. You focus on taking care of yourself and this precious granddaughter of ours." As they were leaving, Veronica pulled me into a tight hug. "Remember, you're not alone in this. We're here for you, always." Their visit left me feeling both comforted and conflicted. On one hand, their support meant the world to me. On the other, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was betraying Ethan by airing our dirty laundry to his parents. Later that night, as I was cleaning up the kitchen, my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Working late again. Don't wait up." I stared at the message, a familiar mix of disappointment and anger rising in my chest. Without thinking, I dialed his number. "Audrey?" Ethan's voice came through, sounding distracted. "Is everything okay?" "No, Ethan, everything is not okay," I said, my voice trembling. "Your parents came over tonight. They could see how much I'm struggling. Why can't you?" There was a long pause. "My parents were there? Why didn't you tell me?" "When, Ethan? When should I have told you? Between your late nights and early mornings, when exactly do we talk anymore?" I heard muffled voices in the background, then Ethan's voice, tense and low. "I can't do this right now, Audrey. We'll talk when I get home." The line went dead before I could respond. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling more alone than ever. As I climbed into our cold, empty bed that night, I made a decision. Tomorrow I would start looking for a nanny. If Ethan wouldn't help, I'd find someone who would. I refused to let my business or my sanity suffer any longer. Little did I know, the next 24 hours would bring a revelation that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my marriage and force me to confront the hardest decision of my life. The front door slammed, jolting me awake. I glanced at the clock, 2:37 a.m. Ethan stumbled into our bedroom, reeking of alcohol and cologne that wasn't mine. "Where have you been?" I demanded, sitting up in bed. Ethan's eyes, bloodshot and unfocused, narrowed at me. "What? Are you my mother now?" "No, I'm your wife and the mother of your child," I shot back, anger rising in my chest. "The wife you've been neglecting and the child you barely see." He scoffed, fumbling with his tie. "Oh, here we go again. Poor Audrey, always the victim." His words hit me like a slap. "Victim? Is that what you think this is about?" "I think it's about you not understanding the pressure I'm under," Ethan slurred. "I'm out there providing for this family while I what?" I interrupted, my voice dangerously low. "While I run a business and take care of our daughter single-handedly?" Ethan waved dismissively. "Your parents were here, weren't they? Bet you all had a grand time talking about what a terrible husband and father I am." I got out of bed, my whole body shaking with rage and hurt. "They came because they care, Ethan. Because they can see what this is doing to me, to us." "Oh, spare me the dramatics," Ethan sneered. "You've got it so hard, don't you? Living in this nice house, not having to worry about money." "Money?" I laughed bitterly. "You think that's what this is about? When was the last time you held your daughter, Ethan? When was the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about work or schedules?" Ethan opened his mouth to retort, but at that moment, his phone buzzed loudly on the nightstand. We both froze, staring at the device. Before I could react, Ethan lunged for it, but in his inebriated state, he fumbled and the phone clattered to the floor between us. I snatched it up, my heart pounding. A text notification lit up the screen. "Caroline, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Last night was amazing." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I looked up at Ethan, whose face had drained of all color. "Audrey," he began, his voice suddenly sober. "I can explain." "Explain," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Explain what, Ethan? How you've been cheating on me? How long has this been going on?" Ethan reached for me, but I recoiled. "It's not what you think. Caroline is just—" "Don't," I cut him off, holding up a hand. "Don't you dare lie to me. Not now." As if on cue, Harper's cries echoed through the baby monitor. The sound snapped me out of my shock. and I moved towards the door. "Where are you going?" Ethan asked, panic edging into his voice. "To take care of our daughter," I replied coldly. "Something you clearly haven't been interested in doing." I spent the rest of the night in the nursery, cradling Harper and trying to make sense of my shattered world. By the time dawn broke, I had cried myself out, leaving nothing but a hollow ache in my chest. When I finally emerged, Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table, head in his hands. He looked up as I entered, his eyes red-rimmed and pleading. "Audrey, please," he began. "We need to talk about this." I stared at him, this man I thought I knew, this man I had loved and trusted. In that moment, I felt something inside me harden. "Yes, we do," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "But not now. Right now, I need you to leave." "Leave?" Ethan echoed, disbelief coloring his tone. "This is my house too, Audrey." I met his gaze unflinchingly. "And this is my life, Ethan. A life you've been lying to for God knows how long. So yes, you need to leave. Now." As Ethan gathered some belongings, moving like a man in a daze, I stood in the kitchen, Harper on my hip, feeling both terrified and strangely calm. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The days following Ethan's departure blurred together in a haze of tears, sleepless nights, and endless questions. I moved through our house like a ghost, tending to Harper on autopilot while my mind raced with memories and doubts. On the third day, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Veronica and Jonathan standing there, their faces etched with concern and something else, shame. "We know," Veronica said softly, pulling me into a tight embrace. "Ethan told us everything." Those words broke the dam I'd been desperately trying to hold back. I collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Jonathan gently guided us inside, closing the door behind us. Once I'd calmed down enough to speak, Ethan's parents shared what they knew. The affair had indeed been going on for over a year, starting when I was just a few months pregnant. Caroline was Ethan's assistant, young and ambitious. Everything I used to be before motherhood had consumed my life. "We're so sorry, Audrey," Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "We had no idea, if we'd known." I shook my head, wiping away tears. "It's not your fault. I didn't know either." Veronica squeezed my hand. "What do you need from us? Whatever it is, we're here for you and Harper." Their unwavering support, despite the circumstances, touched me deeply. In that moment, I realized I had a choice to make. I could let this betrayal destroy me, or I could use it as a catalyst for change. I began, my voice growing stronger with each word. "I think I need to start over, for myself and for Harper." Over the next few weeks, with Veronica and Jonathan's help, I began to rebuild my life. They offered financial support, allowing me to hire a part-time nanny so I could refocus on my business. More importantly, they stood by me as I made the difficult decision to separate from Ethan permanently. When Ethan finally came to collect the rest of his things, I was ready. He stood in my living room, looking lost and remorseful. "Audrey, I know I've made terrible mistakes," he began, "but I love you and Harper. We can work through this, can't we?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "No, Ethan, we can't. What you did, it's not just about the affair. It's about the months of neglect, the broken promises, the way you made me feel like I was failing as a wife and mother when you were the one who'd checked out of our marriage." Ethan's face crumpled. "I never meant to hurt you. I got caught up in work, in feeling important, and I lost sight of what really mattered. But I want to make it right. Please, give me another chance." For a moment, I wavered. The part of me that still loved him, that remembered the man he used to be, wanted to say yes. But then I thought of Harper, of the example I wanted to set for her. "I'm sorry, Ethan, but no," I said firmly. "I deserve better than this. Harper deserves better. And honestly, you need to be better. Not for us, but for yourself." As Ethan left for the last time, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months, I felt hope. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work and my role as Harper's mother with renewed vigor. My business began to thrive again, and I found a balance I never thought possible. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset with Harper in my arms, I made a silent promise to myself and my daughter. We would never again compromise our self-respect or happiness for anyone. We were strong, we were resilient, and we had each other. As if sensing my thoughts, Harper looked up at me with her big, innocent eyes and smiled. In that moment, I knew we would be okay. More than okay, we would thrive. The future stretched out before us, full of possibilities and hope. It wasn't the life I had planned, but as I hugged my daughter close, I realized it was the life we needed. We were writing our own story now, and it was going to be beautiful.